Friends, the topics which is given to me is to talk about an ecological reading, which is basically onto Earth Bible series as well as onto the Psalm 104 and also the Song of Songs. Before I go with the screen share to follow, let me just make a note of it. We have always seen the Bible and also especially the Old Testament, and then within the Old Testament, each books with a different perspective. So when we look in with the perspective of an eco-justice principle or with an ecological reading, the approach which we have for some on Psalms or to the rest of the book will be totally different from how we will look on to the Song of Songs. So I will go first with a brief description of how this can be understood by looking into the different metaphors, different ecological elements which we often try to spiritualize, and to see that how this metaphors and images within the text can be seen from the ecological perspective for the renewal of life, for the revival of life, to raise the voice and to be a resistant power to say no to exploitation of the land. With that, I would like to just go on. The first concern from the Earth Bible series, keeping in mind of 6 principles, eco-justice principles. The focus on to the Psalm 104. I hope you already have some introduction onto the book of Psalms, but today's focus will be on only Psalm 104. So they say a celebration of the Vanua. When you see the word V-A-N-U-A, that is by Arthur Walker John, this word Vanua can be translated as a land or a home or village. So this particular psalm, we call it as, it's identified as a creation or nature psalm, the psalm which talks about the nature, the psalm which talks about the creation, and or it can also be called as a hymn of praise. It is also identified as the descriptive psalm of praise. Normally, let me also add on, we have 2 types of hymn of praise. One is bless the Lord, praise the Lord. These wordings talks about the declarations. But in this psalm, we see a description of, a detailed description is given about what is the reason for us to give thanks or to praise God. Therefore, it is called a descriptive psalm of praise, in which God's creative power and the works of God are described. Every element of the nature is visible and it is engages in the cosmos. So the given article that is on today is a reflection of Psalm 104, where it is a celebration of the land or a celebration of the village or celebration of a home, a celebration of Vanua. The term Vanua can be translated as land, and it exposes their relationship to the earth. This term has 3 connotations, 3 references. It can be physical, or it can be social, or cultural. So the physical refers to a person's village, can be district or a country, and it includes the farmland, forest, fishing grounds, birds, animals, vegetation, and so on. So anything which you see around you, it can also be considered as there is a reason for us to celebrate. The social can refer to small groups. For example, people are referred to as a smaller groups or the inner part of the Vanua or the inner part of the land. Then to the cultural refers to the beliefs, values, and practices of the people of a particular place. The people of some traditions believe that the spirits of the ancestors and the ancestral gods are present and active in the land. So they feel sometimes that we have to satisfy the spirits of the ancestors, and therefore there is a need for a celebration. It's a cultural element. John writes that the natural events such as cyclones can be interpreted as the result of human sin or injustice. This term can also refer to the physical and social environments or the supernatural world. The celebrations expose the cooperation, mutual support, and kinship connections in the land and in the earth. Now we'll move on to say, so the explanation was just to say what is this the idea of manure or the land or the home, and how do we try to see it can be physical or it can be social or it can be cultural element. Now looking into the eco-justice principle. One of the eco-justice principle tries to reaffirm the interconnectedness. But John says it goes beyond an understanding of ecological interconnectedness to a personal feeling of identification and relationships. By developing the kinship relationships to the earth or to the land, it can function as a resistance to exploitation. So that is one point to be noted on. By developing the kinship relationship to the earth or to the land, this eco-justice principle as well as the interconnectedness, it can function as a resistant power to the exploitation. This ecological science understanding of the web of life provides resources for resisting the environmental destruction. But what he's trying to say is, unless we look into the creation, we look into the cosmos and to see that the environment needs to be protected. There is an element of interconnectedness and there is a kind of kinship relationship. Therefore, once we try to identify that, then we'll be able to resist from destructions. Jones rejects the positive aspects of the dominant culture and the negative aspect of the subject culture. So instead of this dualistic approach, John says all elements are mutually interrelated and interdependent in the web or the system of life. There is nothing we can call as there is a dominant. There is nothing we can call something as the oppressed or the minority one, or instead the something which can be of lower status. Instead to see that it is all are mutually interrelated and interdependent in order to go the web or the system of life. So to understand this idea, John exposes the land or one war reading of Psalm 104 in three major concepts. That is, one is God in earth and God itself is earth. God in earth and God as earth. The second aspect is earth as alive, interconnected, interdependent, and intrinsically valuable. Third element, earth as able to raise its voice in celebration of life and in resistance to exploitation. So in other words, earth is equated to God and it has a life and therefore it has the power to resist to the exploitation. So when we try to look into God in earth and as earth, do we see God in earth? Or are we tuned to the teachings of Western theologies that says God is separated from the nature? Where is God? Is it God sits somewhere in the heavens, somewhere above? Or is it God is there in the earth? In other words, the Christian God is a spiritual God and the ancestral gods are the temporal or worldly gods, and they are represented in the person of chief among the people. So there is an idea where why do we connect with the chief or the patron gods? And there is a temporal God, but also there is a God who is represented in human beings. The temporal advantages are prosperity and fertility. In some indigenous communities, during the ceremonies, they pray both for the Christian God and for the ancestral God. Actually, when we got into the mission, it has always been, they have tried to keep away the ancestral gods or the other worshipping of gods and become replaced with only the Christian God. But at some places, still the indigenous communities, they continue to pray both to the Christian God as well as the ancestral God. The communities who follow the traditional religions feels that the ancestral gods are more accessible and present in the Vanva or in the land. In the biblical text, the scholars identify the influence of Canaanite traditions or mythologies. In other words, the influence of the ancient Western text, for example, the thunder is identified as the voice of God. And if you look back onto the Psalms, there are a number of references. You will also see in the book of Amos, it is the voice of God, is your voice of Yahweh. The Lord is identified as the thunder. And in the voice of the thunder, it is, the earth trembles. So there are different imageries we see within the biblical tradition. So in the ancient Western text, the thunder is identified as the voice of God, and the trembling of the earth as the storm theophany. The presence of God. Theophany means the presence or the presence of the God. So the storm imageries are God is wrapped in the light, chariots as the clouds, and ride on the wings of the winds. There are three imageries comes. One is the storm, then it's the light, then the clouds and the wings of the winds. And I would like you to call attention to the scholar who said Gungan. He connects the Hebrew Bible with the Mesopotamian myth, that is Enuma Elish. That is what they call it as the battle against the chaos. Battle against the chaos. So he used the word battle, but the crows call it as a conquest of the primeval flood. And the Gungal calls it as a battle, but the crows call it as a conquest of the primeval flood. And you see it in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. It says, the earth was formless and void. There is no order, and from that, God has brought the order. So people try to say there is an influence where the battle or the conquest, and then the order was brought in. There is also an influence of the Egyptian hymn on the sun. There is an influence on the Egyptian hymn on the sun. So according to the language and the content, John's divide the psalm under three major headings. The three major headings are, one is march, second one is the battle, and the third one is monarchy. March, battle, and the monarchy. So monarch as the representative of God established order and the fertility, and the hand of God rule over the water of chaos. So in the given article, the author says the Fijians consider the sea snakes as their ancestors, and so allow their children to play with them, even though they are deadly poisonous. The way sometimes we see in our Indian tradition, some of the things we may not be see that it is very dangerous for us, but then there are some people who feel there is an element of positivity, and they try to engage with the understanding and the learning to the present context. So in the Indian context, people who live on the seashore know the ugly moods of the sea, but they identify the home as it is a daily source for survival and food for them. Now, if you look onto the news even these times, the people, especially in Kerala also, because of the heavy rain and the storm, and then you'll see that number of times the people's life is taken away by the sea. But then, in spite of the danger which we see over there, but it is the home for and their daily survival and food for them. So the monarch and the war are directly not present in Psalm 104. Leviathan is not the enemy of God, but Leviathan is a fellow creature made to laugh and play. That is actually a connectivity with the ancient Western text, and John tries to say that it is the fellow creature made to laugh and to play. In the ancient Western text, sun, moon, water, fire, flame, etc., and so on, are the personification of different divine entities. But in the biblical tradition, all are God's creation. You also will be, let me also remind you with the Indian tradition, we have the different Hindu religious tradition, different gods, the god of the air, god of the fire, god of life, god of water, There is all these are identified with the different gods even in the Indian tradition. The same way we see in the ancient West Asia, the sun god, moon god, water, all they are called as the different personification. But within the biblical tradition, all God's creation are part of the universe and cosmos. There is no divine entity within the creatures or within the creation. Instead, God stands as the supreme creator. But when the Western interpreters try to present the ideas with the dualisms, and so God and earth are seen with separation. That means God is somewhere above and it is earth as the God's creation. But the ecological reading demands to identify the closer and friendlier relationship within the earth community. So what is the attempt which we are trying to do it either through the CSI Synod Ecology Department or to the different biblical scholarship on the study of it? Look back into the earth and see that there you can see the closer and friendlier relationship within the earth community. And the earth community means it is not just the only what we see in the earth, but it is God is also part of the earth community. God is within the earth community, and we need to identify God as well as the creation together as members of the earth community. Some clearly talks about the fertility and life. Westermann argues that identification of the theme salvation. Westermann is one of the scholars who tried to give a lot of information on the salvation, salvific act of God and the other concerns and the praise of God. So he argues that the theme salvation has neglected the aspect of blessing. That means the blessing refers to fertility and it leads to prosperity and success. And it leads to prosperity and success. Salvation talks about the singular intervention of God, but blessing speaks of ongoing providential care of God. So it is not just one-time salvation, but it is a continuous long process where God's salvific providential care is experienced by the earth community. Psalm 104 talks about shelter and the spirit of life. That means God is present in earth as spirit. God is present in earth as spirit. Then moving on to the death. Death is not viewed as an evil. Instead, it is a natural part of the cycle of life. So better not to see the death as an evil. Instead, it is a part of the cycle of life. And then people can see God's involvement in the cycle of life. The cycle of life, it goes seasons and generations are viewed like inhaling and exhaling of God. Inhaling and exhaling of God. God is present in the earth as a spirit providing blessing, fertility, and life. The comparison can be seen from Genesis chapter 3, verse 17 following to this psalm. The curse turns into a blessing. Curse turns into a blessing, or the destruction to a creation. So there you will see it is you can also counter read with the article which is given on page number 91 and 92 with a detailed description of it, which I'm skipping off because of the time, therefore it is added on there. Psalm 104 claims that the presence of Israel, God in the land, is the source of life. So God is earth, God is present in the earth, God is a part of the earth community, and therefore God's presence in the earth is a witness to the source of life. Earth provides water and food, and it sustains our life. The first concern, earth is God and earth as God. The second aspect is earth is alive. So what John tries to say in this psalm, the earth is the main actor or the element along with the diverse characters. So God is an unnamed subject of some of the words, but the earth is the major subject of the verb and the clause. So in most of the writings of in this psalm 104, this God appears as the subject or earth appears as the subject. That is what the challenge for us. The question raised here is whether the principle of mutual custodianship applicable. Every element on the earth has an identity and life. So therefore, the relationship between earth and the human are not mutual in Psalm 104. Instead, humanity is just one among the species and plays a small part in the psalm, and human beings are more dependent on the earth. Looking back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, 27, 28, you can make a comparison where we have the notion of where earth is the one and where the human beings take a upper hand onto the creation. But here what John's trying to say is it is not the earth. Human beings are not the major or the main character, but a part of the species and one among the rest of the species and the creation. Psalms remind the cycle of rain and the role of the mountains, valleys, rivers, wild animals, birds, trees, and human beings who also share the same resource with other organisms. So therefore, it is not that human beings as the supreme power. Instead, human beings also share the same resource with the rest of the organisms. Human beings are dependent on the earth as the earth provides food, wine, and oil for humanity's physical and the mental being. Earth and many of its inhabitants have independent intrinsic worth. Independent intrinsic worth. Psalm 104 attributes that the spirit and the wisdom of God. There is a reference about the spirit and the wisdom of God. And Psalm 104 gives a picturization as earth is alive and where the wind as the messengers, flame and fire as the servants, springs, water, wild animals, birds sing, and the earth is satisfied and grass sprout for cattle or the beast, herbs for the humanity, and the list continues. You look onto the earth and you see everything is dependent on the other one, and therefore earth is alive and we need to see the list in detail. Earth is full of living beings and all things are animate or inanimate, and including the earth itself is alive. If you analyze the earth element in the psalm, the psalmist affirms that it suggests a diverse, interdependent, and interconnected earth community. Earth carries the whole wider organisms, and all these organisms are interdependent and interconnected with the earth community. The third element, earth celebrates. How do the earth celebrate? It's by praying, feasting, and singing are the characteristics of the celebrations in any community. So this celebration clearly explained in the Psalm 104. The terms like eating, drinking, praying, and praising are the expressions of celebrations. Beauty, humor, and celebrations also accompany the prayer and the celebration. Food, oil, and wine, as I said it earlier, are the produce of the earth, and they make the people happy. They strengthen and gladden the human hearts, make their faces shine. And even if we take back onto the word which appears often with a negative connotation, the Leviathan laughs and plays in the sea. The last section of the psalm gives the idea that the earth with its numerous and diverse inhabitants is the main character in the psalm. And I could be identified as the voice of the earth. Or I is a person who speaks on behalf of the abundant and diverse life of the earth's community. We prefer more to go with the voice of the earth, or when it's not heard, then there is also a possibility where it is the voice of the representative of the earth community. The imperative call to praise, with the call of the earth to God, to join in the celebration, and it is the call of the earth to join in the celebration and ask God to rejoice in earth. So earth rejoices in God, which means in the reverse way, earth community includes God rejoices together. It is nothing to separate that God is somewhere else and the earth instead. The whole earth community rejoices along with God. Earth rejoices in God, which means the earth community includes God rejoices together. Psalm 104 ends with the final call that God and the earth sing together a song that rejoices in abundant life and resists the exploitation. That is the major concern which is shared in the Psalm 104 as a part of where the whole organisms are the part of earth community, and there is no dualisms of earth or God as separation. Instead, it goes together. Moving on to the second area which I am asked to talk about, that is the Song of Songs. That is totally a little different text for all our reading and for all our understanding. And therefore, it also called for a little different, because normally we identify this book as a love poetry. We have this one within the biblical tradition, within the Bible, as a part of the Holy Scripture, the canonized Scripture. But you will not find till the later chapters. It is the divine name God is absent in the text. It is more of a love poetry, or it has the secular tone. But in the Christian tradition, we try to attribute the Song of Songs with the Christ and the church. That's the way we allegorize and we try to interpret the text. But the sexual imageries and the metaphors which is presented in the text, it is identified by Carol Fontaine with identifying of the normal love poems or the love lyrics. By giving that introduction, let me just, because they say it is some of the festivals or the religious tone is very less compared to the rest of the books in the Bible, and it is a secular tone is permitted. And the another specialty of the Song of Songs is you will see a female voice is speaking. Often when we talk about the sexuality, marriage, marital life, the privacy, the private sentiments, people do not talk privately, publicly. Or if they talk also, it is always the women's voice will be less heard. But here, in Song of Songs, you will see the female voice is more predominant than the male voice. Now, how Carol or Fontaine looking into the Earth Bible series, by looking into it with an idea of the metaphors and images used from the earth and trying to explain from the text. Let me go to the slide. The Song of Songs is go forth into the fields and earth-centered reading of the Song of Songs. So the Song of Songs, or what we call the Song of Solomon, is a very unique book in the Old Testament. Fontaine talks about three imageries in the imaginative field. One is court imagery, family imagery, nature imagery. Court imagery, family imagery, and the nature imagery. And the images or metaphors are used to communicate the message. In this process, through known facts, less known or unknown facts or messages communicated easily. That means when we try to look into the court imagery, family imagery, nature imagery, we are familiar with what we know about the court. We are familiar with what we call it as family. We are familiar about what is nature. So from these known facts, we are trying to identify the unknown facts or less known facts to communicate the message. So by doing that process, unknown becomes the known fact. Example, there is actually these examples may not fit for our Indian context, and it may be a little difficult for people to take it with the same idea of it, but we were thought for it for your reflection on understanding of ecological reading. There is an reference which says the beloved's belly is a shudding heap of wheat. So the belly is equated with, the detailed explanation given over there is about the belly dance. And you will see how that is comes. That is equated with the high harvest where the heap of the wheat, heap of the paddy, heap of the rice, that is the imagery which is presented over there. The beloved's belly is a shuddering heap of wheat. Thus the belly reminds of the belly dance or the male's fantasy of consummation, which leads to the pregnancy and the source of blessing, or the heap of wheat, a symbol of good harvest, which is representing to community survival for the another season. So that is one example which I have tried to give you. All imageries in the song exist in relationship to each other. In the natural imagery, earth plays a vital role, and the three main uses of the nature imagery are earth as a location, earth as a metaphor for love object, earth as the index of power. We'll go further again with the three aspects. In Song of Songs, the first aspect is it is the nature imagery. We are leaving the court and the family metaphors. We are moving with the nature imagery and trying to do an ecological eco or earth Bible reading. So there, earth as a location. What is the location of earth in this particular one? The first aspect is it is a refuge. It is a refuge. That means earth and its geographical features stand as a backdrop for the drama of privacy, where the lover and the loved one meets, and for them, earth stands as a cloaked backdrop for the drama of privacy. That is the cost of the lovers, because they are constantly exposed to the community. The lovers do not want to expose in the public place, but here it is in a reverse way. They look for a refuge, and they are neither married nor betrothed. So the beloved longs to take her lover to her mother's inner chamber. That is the special difference you find within the Song of Songs. Usually, everything when they talk about it is never been the mother's inner chamber, the imagery which is used. The beloved longs to take her lover to her mother's inner chamber. Do I miss the... Just 1 second to check the slide. So the lover or the male voice expresses through nature images the appreciation and the frustration of the inaccessibility of the beloved. That means the examples given over there is the lily among the brambles. It is a locked garden. The sealed fountain. She dwells in the garden, unseen, and he yearns for her sight or her voice. The cultural code demands the male family members to guard the chastity of the female family members before marriage and enforce their fidelity after it. So the young lovers know the heated frustration, and as they have no place, they turn to earth to shelter them in their secret attempt to see each other. So another way, a protected person trying to come out of it, and they feel it is not the inside the house or a special place which they consider as a safe place, but instead it is the earth is a safer place for them. It's a refuge, it's a shelter. The sheep pastures or the mountains of Lebanon, or the fields or the nut orchard or the garden are represented as the actual body. First one as the location and refuge, the second one as the workplace, earth as a workplace. So the hidden and growing places of the earth are the best workplace for the lovers. So the venues of the land are the human workplace. That means in the Song of Songs, the workplace does not give the picture of a Garden of Eden. Instead, it demands the continuous human partnership with the land. It's a very little higher level tones which is used over there. So the linking of the food and love is an imagery presentation where the love is nourishing and it requires an ongoing cultivation on the part of human beings. Then earth as a metaphor for the loved one. I said first one is earth as a location. Within that there is a refuge. They stand as a refugee on the earth, and then the workplace as the earth is the better place for their love making. Then the next one, earth as a metaphor for the loved one. The typical genre of the or the literary form of the love poetry is the descriptive fascination of the features and the qualities of the love object, which discloses him or her as lovable. So the portrayal of the girl and the description of the boy are seen in detail. The imagery of the senses which perceive, enjoy all the earth has to offer. You will see the words like tasting, eating, drinking serves as a cover metaphor for sexual consummation. And then normally when we see in the book of Leviticus, book of Numbers, the purity laws where it says the bleeding, even if you see connected with the gospel, the hemorrhage woman, the bleeding and the discharges are considered to be a negative and it is an impure. But in the Song of Songs, you see the smell, touch, and the taste. All these have a positive elements and it is highly appreciated, and that is what it makes a specialty of the Song of Songs as a love lyric and as a love poem. Some critics have presented the gender code, the distribution of natural imagery between the sex. Earth as a sign or index of power. Within the metaphor, they see earth as a sign or the index of power. There are three index or the signs which they try to identify. They are vegetal, animal, and elemental. Three index or three pointers. So in the vegetal links of the power, the author talks about the produce of the growing seasons as a sign that the love story is celebrated within the context of rich fruitfulness. Produce of the growing season is a symbolic representation of the fruitful harvest. In the Song of Songs, lilies are associated with a nourishing breast, milk, wine, oil, spices are associated with the male and female sexual juices. Produce or yield of the earth always signifies the power of life to reproduce itself. The power of life to reproduce itself. The other examples, the green couch in the Song of Songs, 116. There is a fertile tree, there is a wall, there is a door. All these images are referring to different kind of the images and the metaphors. So the challenge is, the question which is for you to think, looking into the Song of Songs, is it the female sexuality is seen from the point of honor and shame than overwhelming the power of life? What the author Fontaine is trying to say, it is the celebration of life. It represents the power of life. There is an element of celebration which you need to identify and to enjoy and then to move forward. That's all metaphors as the important aspect. So, but then when we look on to the how the normal cultural norms try to see the female sexuality with the question of it as a protecting figure for the male to protect the honor of the society. In the animal links of power, I said vegetal, then animal. The animal links of power, the foxes are presented as the spoilers of the love garden vineyard. So where these people who, the lovers who find the place as the garden as a best refuge and the setting place for them, but there they see the animal links of power is equated with the fox which tries to spoil the garden. It represents the possibility of the competition and the plunder the possibility of competition and the plunder. Blossoming vines are a sign of the power of life, and the foxes are the power of death. Within the Song of Songs, you will see the metaphorical images presented as a two different opposite terms. One is for the power of life, another one is for the power of death. But the earth reading suggests that the foxes are feeding. Foxes feeding is the sign of the ongoing circle of life. To keep away the normal notion of two dualisms, the two different aspects, instead to see that they are no more the spoilers, they are no more the plunderers, instead they are the one which is continuously helping the ongoing cycle of life. The farmers' cultivations are intended to broaden the distribution. In the earth-based reading, the gentle, fertile creatures of the field are considered adequate and fitting signs of divine power in the context of oath-taking. That means, in the earth song, the singer turns to the creatures of the earth to empower the desires. Then the elemental links of power, vegetal, animal, and the elemental. The elemental links of power, earthly elements, that means the elemental images of earth, that is wind, fire, and water, are used as a sign of the power of the life forces of the earth. So this is a symbolic presentation of the wheel of growth, death, and rebirth. So when we see it like in the earth, wind, fire, and the water as the symbolic presentations as a sign, it's also a representative of the power of life. And then it's a symbolic presentation on the wheel of growth, death, and rebirth. The celestial elements are also integrated into the Song of Songs. Three major index of power or the sign of power: vegetal, animal, and the elemental. Moving on to the next part of it, where the call for to identify the eco-delight in the Song of Songs. What are the first one, the second part of it, the Song of Songs, which I was trying to say, is identifying the images and the metaphors and try to see that how the earth view their community members. But here now, moving on to the Henrik Vivers, not on eco-delight. What do we understand by the eco-delight in the Song of Songs? Henrik says, the term eco-delight as the interaction between the lovers and the nature as kin. There is an interaction between what is eco-delight. What is interaction between the lovers and the nature as kin is identified as the eco-delight. Some places I have given the page number in the slide, that is just for an identification and not systematically used in this as the academic paper. This delight is a reciprocal human delight in nature and vice versa, and together they celebrate the goodness of life. When they celebrate the goodness of life with an interaction between not just the lovers' interaction, but their interaction along with the nature, it is called the eco-delight. H. Vivers analyzed the topic with the 4 different headings, that is, Israel's view of the nature, earth as a whole, interconnectedness of the humans and the nature, then the mystical aspect of the nature. And if you see it in the eco-delight, and I hope all of you have received these articles, and you will be also later part of it looking onto it, because the technical terms and which is used over the text, it is little of a higher language one, and we'll see that you will take time to go through these materials which has been sent to you for a wider understanding. Each sentence needs a lot of explanation, a lot of understanding, and it will not be an easy thing to finish it within 90 minutes time and to go through onto the text. But a thought for you to see when we try to analyze in our own context in each situation of it. When you see an element which you can connect it with the earth, do you go with, I hope most of us are here with, if you are with any religious tradition or with a Christian tradition, when you try to see anything, do you see anything which you see it on the earth from the perspective of sin, or do you see it from the perspective of God's creation, or do you see it from the perspective of a cultural interpretation? A cultural interpretation where you see some of the things we see it as this is something negative or not as positive. So where do we limit ourselves into that idea? So this ecological reading or an eco principle reading is trying to make you feel that look onto the each element in the earth. Look onto the each element in the earth. It has a purpose, and there is an element of interconnectedness and joining together, and there is a positive aspect which we can look forward for the protection of the universe, looking onto the cosmos to hear the voice of the earth. So here then, when Henrik says it is an eco delight, that is where, because it is in the Song of Songs, it is connected with the idea of the lover's exposition, where it's that how the woman's voice stands and look out. Because in the biblical tradition, if you see in the book of Proverbs, beware of the woman who stands in the open square. You will see it in the book of Proverbs, it says, beware of the woman who stands and calls for the people in the open square or in the marketplace. But here what you see is just the opposite of it, where in the Song of Songs it says the person who is longing for the other person to join and they are praised. A different element you will see it in the Song of Songs. So that is where it says it is an interaction between the lovers and with the nature as the kin. It is not looking for a safer place or walls. Instead, the forest is considered to be the safer place for the lovemaking. And that is where the imagery is the lily in the bramble. And it is the closed walls. So within the bramble, the lovers find a safer place. And that is where the imagery, which seems to be very powerful within the Song of Songs. So Vivier is trying to say, it is Israel's view of nature. And how did the Israel view the nature? You can see within the biblical tradition, when you have any famine takes place, what will be the reason of their saying of the famine? It is disobedience to Torah. The people of Israel have broken the covenant. Therefore, there is a famine, there is a plague, and that idea of it do we find within the Song of Songs. How do we see earth as a home? What is the interconnectedness of humans and the nature? Then the fourth element is the mystical aspect of the nature. How do the Israel see the nature? I've said it why it is seen, how it is seen in the wider context. But how do we see it in the Song of Songs? That is, the Israel-nature relationship is a distant relationship. That is clearly derived from imitating their transcendent creator. That means it is a master-servant relationship in which plants and animals have utilitarian function. Nature is seen as a tool or a property in the hands of humans than their partners. Humans are not the creators of the nature, so they cannot break it, but as stewards, they harness, control, and utilize. In other words, what they say is, it is not something people can turn the nature to something else. Instead, they can only use it and then make use of it for to carry out the divine creation. The discussion on stewardship as to save and take care was often overruled by the idea of rule or dominion or subdue. This is actually a callback to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Then the God said, let us make human beings or humankind in our image. And then later on, to have dominion over the sea or fish of the sea. And that the word dominion and subdue is often misunderstood and is taken over with the idea of overruling than the idea of stewardship. So now the whole world overall understanding of the ecological reading or the ideas related to the eco, to be a part of the Earth Bible community, all these comes to appeal to the people, you be a steward of creation, to save and take care, and to take away the idea of dominion and subdue. So the humans' main focus was to build up their relationship with the divine and their fellow human beings, and therefore nature was not the concern. It has always been a tendency of I as the human being as the supreme, and then only to God, the rest of it as not part of us. Instead, we only depend on it to use for us, and therefore it's a call to turn back and to see that nature is a part and the part and parcel, or maybe nature is above the human beings, which needs to be protected, and we are expected to be the stewards. Then nature mirroring human life, humans' main focus was to build up their relationship with the divine and their fellow human beings, and therefore nature was not the main concern. So now the call for is the nature mirroring human life served as both a survival tool and the didactic tool. That means the all calamities which is happening in the nature now, it teaches a lesson to us that it is the high time you turn back to the nature and protect the nature and try to take care of the nature as the stewards and not as the enemy. That is the Israel's view of the nature and their call for to turn back and to see to be a stewards of God's creation. Then the second element is earth as home. So it is John F. Holt says, the cosmology has been guilty of promoting the cosmic helplessness. I want you to pay attention to the statement which I said it is, when do you feel guilty of anything? And it says the cosmology has been guilty of promoting the formless, cosmic formlessness. That means the majority of the religions taught that humans are strangers onto the earth. This is not our home. Our home is a spiritual home, a world which is above, and therefore this is only a temporary state. So that means all majority of the religions taught that, or teaching goes that the humans are the strangers on the earth. So on a pilgrimage to heaven, so humans strive to leave the earth behind. So in this context, the teaching of the Song of Song is very powerful. It says, it is the mother's house is a favorite domain of intimacy. It is the mother's inner chamber, the mother's house, the earth is a favorite domain of intimacy. What is the home? It is not the four-wall built one, instead the forest, the whole earth, that is the better, safer place and identified as home. Normally, it is the father's house, but here the female voice is heard and it supports the patriarchy. That is to a certain extent a call for a feminist reading as well as an ecological reading, where it says, why in all through the biblical tradition, except one place in Judges, calls attention to the father's house, which is considered to be a perfect place, a safe and secure place and a home for a person. Why is it here? The Song of Songs talks about mother's, not just the house, mother's inner chamber, the metaphor of the female, and also the female imagery is used for the earth, and therefore it says the female voice is trying to subvert the androcentric teaching or the patriarchal ideology. The mother's house is presented as an interior space, comfortable for love making, but in the Song of Songs, the open, cultivated, natural space. So when we read the mother's inner chamber, it is not referring to a house and inside a special chamber place, but instead the mother's chamber is garden, vineyard, orchards, and the pastures are more better place for love making than the other houses. In other words, earth is the safer place, safer specific place, which can be a best place for their love making. In other words, it presents a metaphor of rural retreat or an ideal of the pastoral or an agricultural setting. Okay, a challenge which is placed here is the rural setting versus urban setting. The rural setting versus urban setting. And in the urban setting, and think of the city life where people are often dehumanized and alienated from the environment, which is totally contradicting to the opposite to the rural setting where people are more closer to the nature, more closer to the earth, more closer to the pastoral or agriculture thing. So a metaphor of city versus rural and a call for to turn back to earth. In the Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 9, there is a reference to home. That means a home with its wall, windows, lattice symbolizes the father's or brother's home, not the mother's inner chamber. That means locked in. It is considered to be a social prison. I'm just trying to give you how the scholar has tried to identify the metaphors and to make a comparison of it. So that means locked in or a social prison. So she must exchange the home for a better, and it is the better home is not the father's or brother's house, instead the nature or the earth. Images and metaphors used in love making use the elements of nature. Lover offers a new life on and in companionship with this new earth and its inhabitants. That means a person who feels this earth as a comfortable home, they are not worried about who is looking after us. For their lovemaking, the earth seems to be a safer place without any kind of dangers around them. The lover offers a new life on and in companionship with this new earth and its inhabitants. Nature shows a new face and spreads the sense of nature. Home is a safe and comfortable place where warmth, ease, familiarity, and safety is expected. So the lovers identified those feelings not in the four walls of the home, but instead they identified those feelings in the nature. So there is a retreat, a retrieval of from the culture to the nature. The domestic and the wild imageries and metaphors are used in nature to express the change of natural place as a heaven. The presence of wild animals does not hamper the life of woman. Nature is identified as a paradise where life-giving elements are abundant. So the lover not only delights in her for momentary love, but also celebrates her as the symbol of life. She is the source of life and his home or paradise. So the whole idea which is trying to present over this, the common notion of the privacy and the intimacy and the love making, all that is considered to be a secret aware of it, which is expressed in a wider terms where the earth presents or the earth as a better place and a home for the people, where a connectivity with the natural elements, and in the nature, the warmth and feeling is shared with the rest of the creation. The earth community identifies in this paradise a perfect harmony between the genders here than the Genesis account. This book has to be read in this particular context, and you need to be careful how you try to expose these ideas, because people who are working in the church, unless you take the congregation into your thoughts, it is very difficult for the people to understand what you are trying to communicate to the people. So therefore, a proper caution has to be taken, and to see that how you try to understand this concern and to speak about the concerns within the Song of Songs. So here it is, comparison with the Genesis account, here it is a perfect harmony. It is in this paradise, the earth community identify the perfect harmony between the genders. In Song of Songs, humans, plants, and animals are kin, and love is the key to unlock the life. So we are not talking about the male and female of a person, even though that is the idea which is presented at some point of time. But here it is not just the human beings, but it is the sharing of relationship between humans, the plants, and the animals as the members of a family, and that is where the life is unlocked. Earth is identified as the best home. Let me just see if I have missed the slide. Then coming on to the last concern of it, that is the interconnectedness of humans and the nature, or earth as the kin. Interconnectedness of the nature, human and the nature, or earth as a kin. The metaphors and images, the personifications presented in the Song of Songs shows there is an interconnectedness of humans and the nature. So there is an emphatic bond among all the inhabitants of the land. In other words, what it has been already said it till now, it is, there is nothing we can set apart that it belongs to something else, but instead there is a proper connectivity is needed, and that we all are the members of the one whole universe, and there is a need to carry out the interconnectedness. And then moving on to the mystical aspect of the nature, that is the last point over the 4 different points. And there, what do we understand by the mystical aspect? What is the mystic element of it? The religions talks about the human experience of integrating and the transcending experience. What do we understand by the integrating and transcending experience? For the people, the love making, for them, it is not the home which has made them a transcending experience. Moving from the real perfection of it, they felt the earth as a home was a more perfect place to move from to get integrated to the universe, integrated to the earth, and to experience the transcending power. So the creation of the cosmos out of chaos is a transcending experience, where, calling back once again where we started the discussion, where it says that it is the chaos, order is brought out of chaos. So when the order is brought, there is a transcending experience happen. So the Hood says, transcending aspect of religion as the mystical aspect. This transcending experience is considered to be a mystical aspect, pointing to some deep mystery beyond the symbol. What symbol logic, what I want to say is something which is unknown to us. It is something beyond human understanding, and we try to understand some of the elements of it, and that is what we see in the nature. The gratification of bodily impulses become transformed into a deep spirituality. This happens in the deep and joyful experiences of sexual union. So what it says is the celebration of oneness of the body and the soul with another leads to a heavenly upliftment. If you take it as a literal sense, or if you take it in a metaphorical sense, to a wider context of it, where these two entities join together, and that is where they experience the heavenly power, a mystical experience of it. It can be connected with interconnectedness of two elements in the nature, and if you are able to get it connected with them, and that is where you experience the fullness of the spirituality. In the Song of Songs, the mystical aspect is visible, where the animals are divinized, animals are used in sacrosanct formulas, and God can be recognized in animals and in humans too. That is actually an extreme reading, which Hoot is trying to say. If you want to see the divine power, you can also see it in the plants, you can also see it in the animals. It is not just the divine is something which is away from everything. In every element of the earth community, you can see the self-revelation of God, or even you can see the divine power within all the earth community members. So how do we analyze and see it? Or is it a kind of not as a replacing something, but to experiencing of the divine power? God is not named in the Song of Songs, but everywhere to be tasted, smelled, heard, seen, and touched. Many times people ask the question, is it Song of Songs? Why is it in the Bible? Same like the book of Esther, because the divine name God is not seen in these books, the early chapters of Esther and then this book. But why is it included within the canonized scripture? And I always tell them because it is with the authorship and the attribution of the Solomon. So here what you say, it is, you won't find the presence of divine name there. God is not named in the Song of Songs, but everywhere it is tasted, smelled, heard, seen, and touched. It is up to you how you will try to identify the power of God. The transcendent God is absent from the song. Song means I'm referring to the Song of Songs book. So the idea is God is not the world, but God is in the world. God is not the world, but God is present in the world. Earth is God. Earth is in the God is in the earth. So God is present in every individual, non-human animals, and the humans. With the plundered, impoverished, and stripped earth, there can be no deep experience. What happens to the earth? That is the call for us to think. It is plundered, it has made it into impoverished, and is also stripped. The ecological challenges before us. Therefore, we will not be able to see the deep experience. Instead, we can only see the dark side of the earth. And in the dark side of the earth, humans can never experience this mystical experience without the earth or the environment. So it is a call for us to see how we see the positive elements of the earth, the positive value of stewardship, and to protect the universe and the earth. To conclude, the members of the earth community continue to enrich each other by realizing the home experience. That means earth as a kin, earth as a member of the community, exposed in the interconnectedness and with the mystical experience. Earth is the source of life to all the inhabitants, and it is a call to say no to exploitation or greed, and a call to join the joyous celebration of the earth community. It's a call to join for the joyous celebration of the earth. We may not be able to change the whole world, but to the place wherever we are, even in our small place, anything which is harming the nature and the universe, we should be able to say no to it and to move forward to see how we can contribute towards the fullness of life experience to be a part of the interconnectedness of the earth community.